Bom dia.
Good morning. Well, first of all, I want to thank Dariusz for accepting our invitation to come to IN3. Dariusz Jemielniak is a professor of management at Kozminski University in Warsaw, Poland. He is the co-founder of the NERDS, New Research on Digital Societies, and he's also the head of the Center for Research on Organizations and Workplaces. He has developed most of his research around knowledge-intensive workplace, open collaboration, flows organizations, and professional culture, with particular focus on software development, as well as non-professional groups such as Wikipedia. Since 2006, he's been very active in the Wikimedia movement, and in 2012, he was appointed to the FELN's Dissemination Committee of Wikimedia Foundation and became its first chairperson. He's here today because he has very recently published a very important book on Wikipedia. The book is called Common Knowledge, an Ethnography of Wikipedia, and it has been published by Stanford University Press this very year. It is the first deep ethnographic work done on Wikipedia, and I really think it's one of the most brilliant contributions in academia about Wikipedia. And I am not the only one, since the book has received extremely positive reviews in the last months. It's a brilliant book, very detailed, and I would add that he gets to some points that go a bit against the usual understanding, even in academia, about Wikipedia. His talk today is entitled, as you see, A-hierarchical open collaboration, how conflicts and bureaucratic rules make Wikipedia grow. So, Dariusz?
Many thanks. First of all, I really appreciate the possibility to be here. I'm really grateful, and thank you for this, well, way exaggerated introduction. And to start with, I want to give a big picture, and apologies to all of you, because I'm pretty sure people who are here definitely know this. But for me, Wikipedia is not really an encyclopedia, it's the largest movement in humankind history, the largest collaboration project ever. 22 million accounts, 300,000 people editing every month, and 300,000 people editing more than 10 times. So this is crazy. Never in the humankind history has anything like this happened. Second, it's actually pretty good. 2005, you all know the study. It was considered to be not containing much more errors than the Britannica. And since then, since this study, because you know this study was a little controversial, there were disputes, there's no disputes anymore. Wikipedia has grown 50 times since then. Britannica has stayed the same. So it's 50 times larger than when it was considered to be on par. And what I find really most fascinating, coming from organization studies background, is that it's a virtual open collaboration organization. What is really important as well, it is a virtual collaboration organization which relies on non-professionals. If you have a look at other open source projects, people will participate, but very often they will get, first of all, they will get credits. Second, they will get professional recognition. They can even put it on CV. Who on earth would put writing for Wikipedia on their CV? It's not really something that happens very often. These are people who do it, and they do it not necessarily for any professional gain they can get. What is amazing is that it is also 4 million articles, huge, insane, but 24 million pages. What are those pages? Anyone? I'm not asking you, I will know. Anyone who's not a Wikipedian? What is this black mass of 20 million pages doing there? What could this possibly be? Well, there's discussion pages. For any single article, there will be a discussion page, so this accounts for 4 million. Of course, there are categories, right? I mean, each article has to be categorized. Many articles will have different categories. But there's also a vast majority of the pages that are there will be community discussions, will be decisions to be made. It's a vivid community. If we imagine that Wikipedia is the largest encyclopedia ever made, and we only realize that it's still small as considered to the amount of text that the community generates discussing Wikipedia, this is getting crazy. And topics and discussions are real lengthy. This is really easily going into hundreds of thousands of pages per discussion. very different editing patterns. Professors and primary school students can make valuable contributions, so this is unusual too. And also very unusual, well, maybe not unusual, but very interesting development. Still steady growth. In 2007, there were articles predicting that Wikipedia will end in 1 or 2 years. It's pretty funny because the guy who wrote this keeps insisting that it's going to go down. He just updates the date. Okay, good luck with that. So far, the growth is still there. Interestingly enough, the number of weeks between each 10 million of edits is stable. It's stabilized around 2006, and it stays the same. I haven't updated it, but it's, the last time I checked, it was still pretty much the same, which tells us a very, again, awkward thing. It means that when we have less editors, the rest magically edits more, and the other way around. So there's some sort of equilibrium. No idea why it happens. Difficult to measure this very process because these are large numbers, but still, we know that it happens. And to go into studying this open collaboration community, as Edward already mentioned, I did a long-term ethnographic project, 2012. I ended up with a 5-digit edit count, which is pretty low, actually, not very high. I'm an admin, a bureaucrat, a check user, a steward. So I've been in most of roles in the community that you can hold. And I'm involved in the funds dissemination committee as well, as Edward mentioned. The results are out in 2 languages so far. And what I want to tell you today is about how conflict makes Wikipedia work. And to start doing this, I will just very briefly, again, apologies to those of you who know, I will briefly describe several Wikipedia rules which are important for analyzing this phenomenon. First of all, no personal attacks are allowed. Unlike other fora on Wikipedia, if you really get angry, you will be blocked, most likely, if you really insult someone. And it's not even allowed if you write to me, Dariusz is an idiot, and I write, no, you're an idiot. We both may be blocked because we both violate the rule. There's no reciprocity as an excuse allowed. Also, it lowers your status. If you ever want to go for an admin, you can be damn sure that people will dig it out if you ever violated this rule. Second, Wikipedia is totally not about truth. Nobody cares about truth. It's only about verifiability. And as long as there are sources which are verifiable, we don't care if it's true or not, which actually makes much more sense. Who is to decide what's true? There, since the process is oriented at external sources, as long as these are valid, you can add whatever information you want. And if you have a look at articles such as global warming or George W. Bush or abortion, you will see that there are different sides to the story. As long as they are well sourced, they will be combined into a coherent article. Also, conflict is channeled to facilitate collaboration. This is a process that I find really fascinating because quite often Wikipedia is portrayed as open collaboration project. I like that. This sounds nice. But if you say it's open collaboration, very often the image that will come to your mind will be people, you know, hippies, nice and shiny, giving each other flowers. This is not true. People will very often wallow in conflict. They will really get agitated. And through that, they will create encyclopedia. Also, what is important, there is a very flat hierarchy on Wikipedia. Any roles with increased status will be just admins, bureaucrats, stewards, with some additional roles that are not important, like check users or oversighters. But more importantly, those are technical functions, which means that being an admin does not give you any authority over the others. Just on the contrary, if you are an admin, the standards of behavior towards you will be higher. People will expect you, at least, to be more following the rules. Management is very democratic. This organization relies on participative process. Application of rules is pretty much impartial to one's status. If you recall Max Weber, this is exactly what he was writing about the perfect bureaucracy, right? Ideal bureaucracy. Decisions are based on consensus rather than plain voting, which is important too. It in most cases on Wikipedia, and then again, I'm generalizing, I'm talking about English Wikipedia and Polish Wikipedia, but the rules are pretty similar there. Just voting will not be enough. Usually you will have to make a point, you will try to reason your point of view, and overall, the result will be based not just on sheer head count, whoever supports one side, but also on trying to find out whether these people are making a point or not. Finally, there are very many rules. We'll talk about this later. But one of the rules is that you can ignore all rules, which, if it worked, it would be pretty cool. Unfortunately, as I will try to show you, it's not in use that much anymore. The number of policies is just insane. I've counted just to see 50 core policies amount to 150,000 words, which is roughly a little more than my book. And this is just the tip of an iceberg. There are more than 1,000 regulatory documents on English Wikipedia. It's absolutely impossible for anyone to read through this. Even the most experienced Wikipedians will not know them all. And even the most important ones are basically impossible to learn for a newcomer. Well, how could it even work? You hand a handbook to a newcomer and please come back in 3 months once you've learned. Also, consensus is very important. Quite often, people will go a long way just to make sure that consensus is provided, even if everybody really knows what the result will be. As I said, all decisions are participatory, but I cannot emphasize it more. Even a newcomer, if they have a very good idea, they will come, they will propose something, propose some changes, and people will listen. On Wikipedia, I mean, on a website, it's probably a little more complicated, but on a mailing list, many mailing lists of Wikipedia, newcomers, even known trolls, will ask questions, and I've seen it many times. Even the head of the foundation will be asked questions, and sometimes if the questions are valid, they will be just immediately answered, even if the person is a known troll. So there is no, your credibility will not have influence on the validity of your argument. If the argument is solid, it doesn't matter who you are. And I want to start the narrative with telling you about the most epic conflict of all time on Wikipedia, like the largest ever. And it is a conflict about one of the articles, one of the first 10 articles that were made, in fact. I dug out because the very early days of Wikipedia are not documented. It's not on Wikipedia. But there is an archive that can be dug out, so I've checked the very early edits on this article as well. And the article is about a city in Poland. Miraculously, somehow the major conflicts on Wikipedia, English Wikipedia, involve Polish people. I have no idea why, but seriously, Gdańsk, Danzig, Marie Curie Skłodowska, Copernic, and so on and so forth. I mean, there's plenty of conflicts involving Polish people. I think it's not for our fault, of course. And the essence of this conflict was whether the city in Poland, called Gdańsk in Polish and Danzig in German, what should be the head word? Because as you know, on Wikipedia you can create an article and you can create a redirect. Typically, if you have, for example, if you have different spellings for the same phenomenon, you'll have a redirect and nobody would bother. But in this case, a decision had to be made what will be a redirect and what will be the main article. And of course, everybody wanted to claim that their title is the actual more popular name for this particular city. It was considered to be one of the lamest editors on Wikipedia. It was covered in several publications as well. I think in my book I go into a pretty detailed analysis, but then again, it's a sea of data, so you can easily write plenty of articles based on this. And it lasted for several years. The biggest peak was in 2004, 2005. But occasional minor bursts are even today. I checked several months ago, somebody was trying to make a change again. Within seconds, it disappeared. So clearly a consensus has been established, and after this conflict has been resolved, it stayed resolved. 400,000 of words. Insane again. 4,500 edits just 2001, 2012, which as you can see means that it's edited all the time, almost, more than every day. Just to give you a little bit of flavor of how the edit work could look like about Danzig Gdańsk, you're certainly not helping your case by spouting Nazi propaganda, just to break ice, you know, to start a conversation. To say that it was known as Danzig in historical contexts sounds very much like unconscious Soviet-era propaganda and an attempt to disguise the basic reality that the city used to be inhabited by Germans. So as you can see, both sides didn't really mince words. The very conflict was an origin of the so-called revert rule. The rule, which is, by the way, it's present on English Wikipedia but not on many other Wikipedias, means that you cannot make more than 3 reverts, which means, coming back to the previous version of the article, in 24 hours. Only, even if you're right, even if you're certain you're right, if it's a vandalism, you're not supposed to make more than 3 reverts per day. Of course, it was a source of many bans, and a ban is a lifetime block for a person on Wikipedia. Many blocks as well, flame wars sprinkled throughout all Wikipedias that are involved. German Wikipedia, Polish Wikipedia, Estonian Wikipedia, because, you know, the conflict started there, but people are trying to make, you know, a strategic move to go around, you know. If all 10 other Wikipedias say it's Gdańsk, obviously it has to be Gdańsk, right? And you should keep in mind that at that time, it was not so easy to find reliable sources online. Access to online libraries was much more limited. Databases for articles were not as accessible as they are now, so people were referring to other encyclopedias or just basically Google searches, which again is obviously not a good tool, right? Because Google search will also bring a very common mistake as a more typical result rather than the proper one. And all of these options were considered way too controversial. People who were involved in the conflict were so fixed that writing that Gdańsk, formerly Danzig, was not an option they would consider. Why? Mainly because people who were supporting Gdańsk option, they were saying it's no, people who were supporting Danzig option in this case were saying, no, currently the English user will call it Danzig. It's not Gdańsk now, sorry. Second option, Gdańsk, German Danzig, was not supported by the other side because they would say, no, it's not just German, it's also English. Gdańsk, formerly also Danzig, not acceptable, formerly also Danzig, is not acceptable because it's Danzig now, it's not a past. Gdańsk, in English, formerly known as Danzig, again, not an option acceptable. This was getting really paranoid at some point. People were even considering, there was a lengthy discussion, seriously, like 1,000 words or more, whether if the New York Times writes about Gdańsk, without this little title over, is it a conscious choice? Does it signify that in the English language you should omit this, or maybe it's just a mistake, typographic mistake? A lengthy discussion, whether it's intentional or not. Really many attempts to resolve this conflict. People were involved from all sorts of levels of Wikipedia. Bureaucrats, board members, Jimbo Wales got involved. He jumped in like without any knowledge whatsoever of what is happening. It was pretty funny because he thought, oh yeah, there's a huge conflict, I'll come and tell you what to do. Of course he came, he didn't know what people said before, so very quickly he got rebutted by both sides. I mean, nobody really wanted Jimbo there because he didn't know what's happening. But the same happened with the board members and the bureaucrats, mainly because people really built some history together. Even though they were in a very serious conflict, they sort of like were on the same side of the fence, all in all.
It became a field of itself.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a game, but you begin to appreciate your opponent, in a way. Yeah, seriously, it's of course you can call them a Nazi, but still it's your Nazi. Obviously, the unengaged users very quickly dropped out. You have an escalation of conflict. In the economic game theory, you can observe this, that if stakes increase, people drop out if they do not have stakes. And people had really high stakes here, right? Because got involved in a very serious conflict. And of course, the hardcore remained only. So it got polarized very quickly. If you were not a fanatic, you would basically be flooded. And this is a very typical phenomenon on Wikipedia. Once you enter a conflict, you should be ready to face being flooded with information. If you think about it, it makes sense. Since you shouldn't insult a person, the easy way to win is basically to be persistent and really stay there, throw 20 references at them. And if they read through this, throw 20 more. You know, do this, and eventually most people will fail out. And you didn't really break any rules. That's fine. So flooding with information is one strategy. Interestingly, as I said, people were really making concessions to their adversaries, very similarly to the so-called Christmas truce. As you probably know, in 1916, Germans and French were in trenches, they were shooting each other, but for Christmas, they stopped, they shook hands, exchanged presents, and the next day they started shooting each other again. So this was happening on Wikipedia as well. And all in all, concessions to the other side were very much appreciated. For example, I remember one case when a user said, you know what, since I come from the other side, I have to admit that your side is right. And everybody appreciated this, right? Like this coming out to the ones who are shooting you. And the forever was only able to eliminate the most rabid participants, really people who are really rude. These were blocked. But the others learned very quickly how to make an insult without breaking the rules. You learn. And since there were no ultimate sources to how to resolve this, the conflict persisted. If you think about it, it's very difficult to prove how should the city be named. It's not trivial, at least. Now there are established rules how we can go around this, but nevertheless, it wasn't trivial then. And all attempts at consensus were contested. In some areas, of course, there was some agreement already built. For example, for some historical periods, people agreed, fine, we discussed what the article should be called now, but for some historical periods, we have a consensus. So this was good. And finally, what is really interesting is that the conflict was resolved by breaking the rules. It was not really a consensus at all. It was a ballot. And people calculated the head count. I went to the archives, I checked exactly, and the voting was for certain periods of time, for certain historical periods. In at least one case, the ballot was closed in a different way that I would close it as an admin. I think the person who was closing it made a mistake. Well, still it stayed, and it stays still now. Because people are too tired, you know, heroes are exhausted. The way it was closed was considered to be the final solution, and this also tells us something about Wikipedia. Once there's an organizational memory that something took us a lot of time, people will accept the result even if the result is wrong. And it was guarded by the participant of this particular conflict. But this is just one thing, one conflict. What is really interesting for us is that this kind of conflict perpetuates. We have many conflicts of this sort on Wikipedia, even now. For example, should it be Ivory Coast or whatever it's pronounced in French? I'm sorry. I'm sure someone. Oh, whatever he said. Kiev or Kiev. Ganges or Ganga. This one is particularly painful because, as you know, Ganges is the English term for a river in India. This English term, of course, it is used by the Brits, and it's a colonial name of a river which is called Ganga by native speakers of English from India. So we have two native language usages, and for people from India, it's actually a very insulting name if you're using a colonial name instead of the ones they're using. Unfortunately, as of now, predominantly English Wikipedia relies on American and British users, so this colonial name stays the same, with occasional wars. But there are even crazier topics. Should it be yogurt or yogurt? I like the discussion, really. And you know how it was resolved? This tells us something about people. It was resolved by a rule saying that whatever the dialect was used as the first one will stay. Well, at least it's fair, right? I mean, at least fair to some extent. I mean, if you really want the British version to be the dominant one, make more articles, start more articles. Otherwise, of course, sometimes you will have a good argument. For example, the word organization, it comes from Greek organizo, so it makes sense to use Z there, even in British proper spelling. But for yogurt and yogurt, no explanation of this sort. The final one that I find particularly funny, does Mexico have an official language? Nobody knows! We don't know. Maybe you can find out, there are sources now. But there was a lengthy discussion, no resolution. People were not able to prove that it actually does have an official language.
Is there some attempts here, like, to diplomatically contact the state of Mexico, addressing them this question? Well,
this could be a way to approach this, but remember that Wikipedia relies, it cannot be a primary source of information. So just receiving a reply from Mexican government would not help.
And asking them, yeah, but you can ask them to make a public statement about
Yes, of course. This would be a solution. Once I used a similar approach. There was, on Polish Wikipedia, there was a case in which some administrators were insisting on using male pronouns only for members of parliament. And they were insisting that in the, well, basically in Polish law, only male pronouns are used. So I contacted a professor of Polish language who was running an official popular blog for proper English usage. I asked him to publish an opinion about this, and then I used this as, you know, as a reference and to argue that this is probably not the best idea. But of course, this could be done. And surely if someone had contacts with the Mexico embassy could do this, but this is, again, this is getting out of proportion, for God's sake. I mean, making an official state government statement just to resolve whether Mexico has an official language is probably going over the board. The conflict trajectories that I've identified rely on two criteria. First of all, whether it's very confrontational or not, and second, whether commitment is equal or not. And what I found out is that when there's an equal commitment level and it's very confrontational, usually somebody will get blocked. So someone who is overly agitated and confrontational will get eliminated. This is good. This is actually a very good scenario. The domination scenario, when it's non-confrontational and there are unequal commitments, this is the example I told you about, flooding someone with information. I'm not really insulting you, but I will make it impossible for you to continue a discussion unless you commit as much time as I did. There's the desirable scenario, collaboration, equal commitment, non-confrontational. This is the scenario that is quite often portrayed as Wikipedian standard. Unfortunately, my observation is that very often we'll have the one that I described on the Danzig case, the stalemate. Equal commitment, confrontational. People gradually learn how to, not to break the rules, but they will perpetuate the conflict itself. And a second case I wanted to tell you about, is the so-called SG controversy, which I think will tell us a little bit more why people go into this kind of mindset. SG controversy is a case in 2007, half a million words of discussion. And SG was basically a user who claimed to be a tenured professor of theology. As it turned out, he wasn't, but before it was revealed, he received very high support as an admin, bureaucrat, Czech user, chairperson of the mediation committee, so a very high-level English Wikipedia user. And the New Yorker wrote that, in fact, he was a 24-year-old paralegal. When it turned out that he wasn't a professor, he defended himself, saying, you know what, I created a fake persona because I needed to protect my privacy. Makes perfect sense. He actually made a point that he received many death threats. As a side point, 24% of editors on Wikipedia are harassed, so people were sympathetic to this. I myself, as an admin, I've received threats one from a very psychotic martial arts instructor. So, you know, protecting your privacy is probably a good idea every now and then. People were sympathetic. And he made a very valid point. He never wanted to really falsify information, but he wanted to sort of fend off stalkers. Fine. Many people supported this view on anonymity, including high-level Wikipedians. For example, a known bureaucrat, ARPCOM member currently, I think, or formerly. Jimbo nominated him to ARPCOM, probably as a form of support to him. And New York Times quoted him as totally dismissing the issue. And people were saying basically, you know, credentials don't matter. Who cares if you're a professor or not? Doesn't matter. Whatever matters is your point of view. And this is where the problem lay as well, for Wikipedians at least. It turned out that it was how he used his credentials. Because as it turned out, for example, he was recommending Catholicism for Dummies as a good resource. And he said, I would hang my PhD on that. Well, okay. I mean, his PhD was worth, well, not really much, but the tide started to change. And people started questioning whether, you know, it's fine to use fake credentials to leverage something. And of course, he was made to resign. But the most important part is how the community reacted later. And they started something straightforward and obvious. Jimbo Wales proposed, you know what, in that case, why don't we verify credentials? Makes sense, right? I mean, if somebody claims to be a professor, prove it. But it turned out that it wasn't so simple. Jimbo told Associated Press that they are going to introduce it, but the community revolted. Nobody wanted it. People were, in 130,000 words of discussion, people widely protested it. There was a counter-proposal to ignore all credentials. Finally, there was no stable outcome at all. So it's huge scandal, huge discussion, no outcome. Again, weird. The question is why? I think one of the reasons why it didn't work out was that people didn't want it to be regulated at all. Well, one outcome was sort of advisory essay, which came through 14 in favor, 13 against, so it never got a status of a policy, that we need to be honest. Again, boring, general, well, honest, yeah, right. It doesn't really address the issue. As of now, fake personas are allowed. You can claim to be somebody else that you are. Sock puppetry is forbidden though. Sock puppetry is a phenomenon in which you're editing from two different accounts as if it were two different people. So for example, in this case, you could give yourself support. And identities are created only within the community. Behavioral norms tell you exactly what you can do, but do not really tell you whom you can claim to be. You can claim to be anyone you want. And apparently, instead of those asymmetrical trust built between people, so that relying on credentials, people prefer to trust in procedures. Think about it. Who goes to edit on Wikipedia? People who not necessarily are tenured professors. It's quite often people who will have a joy from adapting identity of somebody who's an expert. You're a student, but on Wikipedia you're a big honcho. So it's you can prove you legitimize your knowledge just by making a point instead of jumping through hoops of professional formal authority. For that reason itself, other projects which rely on formal credentials verification failed, I think. Citizendom, it's a very good example of it. Well, nice project created by one of Wikipedia early co-founders, and it failed, most likely just because it required credential verification from anyone who wanted to edit. So if there is a transfer of trust from people to procedures, and there has to be, because you cannot really trust a person if they can claim whoever they are, the procedures themselves become the most important ones. So there's an advancing bureaucratization. There's a conscious choice on Wikipedia design that you do not want to trust people, you want to trust the procedure. A side effect, of course, will be advancing conflicts, because there is no one who is legitimized to resolve them, but also advancing bureaucratization, which is the last topic that I will try to cover in this presentation. Obviously, you can build your status within the community, but you delegitimize experts. And there are very many difficulties with expertise-based control. So, for example, creating expert panels on Wikipedia never really took off. People tried doing this, never really gained any traction. And bureaucracy has to take over. This is inevitable. Bureaucracy takes over in so many ways that I really find it surprising that it still stays on. This year I had an op-ed in Slate making a point that bureaucracy is killing Wikipedia. I received a number of angry comments that, first of all, that it's not. Second of all, that it's way too late to change this, and so on and so forth. But I don't think there's any agency in the movement to change this anyway. There's no one who could jump in and say, you know what, let's cut 90% of the rules because there's just too many. No one could do this unless there was a really, really strong movement within the movement. And the things in which people are controlled on Wikipedia amaze me as well. It's called a participatory project, free. People can join, people can go up. Why so much control? I mean, much more than in any regular organization. First of all, there's a very strong control of how you're supposed to talk to other people on Wikipedia. And this control is directed towards other people being able to control you. It's so crazy that even the technical solutions offered by Wiki engine are ignored just for the sake of control. For instance, since the very beginning, the talk page for a person had this function that you got notified when somebody wrote on your page. Nevertheless, on English Wikipedia, people, as you can see from the quote, are required to reply on the page where the discussion started, instead of exchanging sort of like messages on each other's talk pages. As a side effect, if you follow like 1,000, 10,000 pages, very easily you can forget that you participated in the discussion. And only recently, a notification system has been created as a sort of workaround so that people could notify each other that something requires their attention. Second of all, revision tracking is extreme. Everything is tracked. IPs, which means that people who are not registered, are marked as red, so they require particular attention. Recent changes are patrolled. And the whole system is created in such a way that people will treat all newcomers as vandals. That's the way it is. There are even special rules advising that IPs are humans too. Apparently Wikipedians need to be reminded that newcomers are also humans. As Aaron Halfaker shown, 80% of new editors' contributions are not harmful, 40% are clearly valuable, but still the rejection of good faith edits has been rising over the years, steadily. So we're becoming more and more internally oriented. 28% of editors felt looked down upon. It's a pretty old report. I need to update this, but I'm pretty sure it has not changed for better. The growing alienation, obviously, is a result, us versus them mentality. And then again, there's a huge dissonance of this egalitarian discourse. We're all peers, we're all supportive with this really rebuttal of newcomers. And again, extreme conservative control. Everything you say can and will be used against you. If you go for an RFA, if you want to become an admin, you can be damn sure that people will dig out quotes from whatever you said years ago. Think about it. In no organization that you know, people walk around with voice recorders. But this is exactly the situation. Whatever you say has to be recorded. There are very strong norms on Wikipedia against going off the record. You're not supposed to talk to people off Wiki. You're not supposed to communicate on chat, phone, or whatever, just because it will not be tracked. The norm is to be controlled. And of course, as a result, patrolling, talk pages is a common sport for trolls. If you have any enemies, you can be sure they will dig out stuff. I myself, I was the first ever administrator who was called for recall on Polish Wikipedia. On Polish Wikipedia, recall is voluntary, so I agreed to be recalled if any, I think, 3 users called for this. I had 3 trolls who did. I passed with 95% support, so I stayed an admin. But nevertheless, this sort of really mentality that I will try to dig for quotes that will compromise you is very typical. And it's a panopticon. Everybody watches everybody. So the mentality, if you click save, it will stay there forever. The way you phrase things, the way you phrase dialogues with others is affected. You never will say what you think. You will say what will keep you safe years from now. It's not really a freedom of speech then, right? I mean, if you have to really control yourself that much, how is it freedom? How is it free at all? And there are very strong procedures. The ignore all rules rule is very rarely invoked. Not anymore. You cannot really ignore rules. It's just a slogan that you can. As I said, 50 policies on Wiki, 450 guidelines, more than 1,000 regulatory documents. And this is not just the English Wikipedia. On the Polish Wikipedia, we have about 40 policies. On other Wikipedias, I checked the major projects. There's, again, loads of this. I do not know about the Spanish one or the Catalan one, but I'm pretty sure it's probably proportional to the number of users and the amount of text that is created on Wikipedia anyway. So the conclusions from this, unfortunately, bureaucratic rules substitute for the missing leadership and management. It is, in theory, it is participative management, but all in all, in practice, people need to follow something, and they will follow policies, procedures, whatever they generate. They bring, of course, we can blame the reality. People bring what they expect, and they expect rules, so rules are created. But we have many channels through which we can create rules. There are no channels to undo them. Very rarely somebody will say, you know what, let's scratch this rule. Let's not use anymore. It will stay, just, the accumulation, the creed. Also, bureaucracy helps a lot in creating informal strategies and informal cabals. Whoever knows the rules really well will find a way. I mean, for a newcomer, you'll always find a way. I've never had trouble with, dealing with discussions. I know people, right? If I'm too involved in discussion, I can always ask a colleague who's also an admin. It's for the Wikipedia's good. I mean, we all do this for the good. I mean, I know it's a troll, right? So I'll ask a colleague to help me out so that it looks nicer. But if you look about it from the other side, it looks like a cabal, and it is sort of a cabal. We gang up on a person we think is wrong, and this is wrong as well, but I don't think there are organizational rules that can forbid it. And the results, again, deter new users, and they fossilize the status quo. There is an elite number of users who can go away with a lot of stuff on Wikipedia, and of course it aggravates those who are not in the power. What is another side effect is that consensus-oriented design, of course, it's treated as great, but then again, it does have many negative side effects. For instance, it delegitimizes natural leaders. All organizations have natural leaders emerging, but if you are operating in an organization with a very strong ideology of no leadership, you will be just facing more trouble. It will be very difficult for you to make any change happen. And what is, well, one positive thing is that those democratic hierarchies rely on open dissent, which means that if a bystander reads about Wikipedia, they will see that people smash each other all the time, and they will think it's a very hostile environment. This is partially true, but not really, not in all cases at least. Just because people are not afraid to express their dissent. You can say you disagree, and it's fine, nobody will punish you. That's why there's more dissent present. And again, Wikipedia is really based on autocratic design, so it's incomplete by design. You can really see the rules as a system. It's basically growing. Some will say it's a growing cancer. Some will say it's, you know, a growing other blob. But nevertheless, it's never been systematically thought through. I think our time is pretty much over. So I would like to move to the discussion part. Here, a short commercial break. This is the book about Wikipedia that I've based this on. My previous one, 2012, it's about the new knowledge workers, and it's an analysis of software engineers from the Silicon Valley in Poland. But now, let's move to discussion.
Great. Thank you very much. Do you see any parallels with the Paris Commune? Because that's where people made all these arguments that, for example, 3 individuals couldn't speak to each other because there was a conspiracy. They could only speak in public, and there was all this marshalling the streets. There was also this very eminent rule that, I don't know, Maurice Blanchot said that it was the beginning of human rights, that independent of your credentials, doesn't matter if you were a king, a general, or a worker, you could be beheaded. So this was applied as this was the first rule that applies to everybody. So I saw many parallels as you were speaking with this kind of the beginning of a radical democracy, basically.
I love it. I mean, it's a great parallel that you're pointing that I haven't thought about. Very good point. It calls for an article.
So the next book can be called Commune. So, do you have any words? When I'm studying hackerspaces, it's also a kind of organization where people participate as non-professionals. However, most of the time, they are actually professionals. And it is a very simple question, like if you have any term or if you know in the literature there is any, on literature or on expertise, any word to describe this when there is an organization which is officially a non-professional organization, but mainly formed by professionals who participate as normal citizens. There are many inversions in this.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, I'm not really studying those professionally driven organizations per se. On Wikipedia, I think it's just the opposite. Very often, a professional editing Wikipedia will not edit from their expertise.
Yeah.
So
I just wonder if you both went through the literature.
Mm-hmm. We can follow up on that. There is a really good body of literature on open source creation, which is sort of professionally driven.
So do you see any chance that in the same way that Christianity was renewed by Protestantism, by saying, okay, we have to keep it more simple, we have to cut back on the rules, we have to destroy like part of the history and kind of start over, or arts by the avant-garde saying that forget the past, we start with something radically simple. Maybe there will be a process that is similar to how the Linux distributions evolved with, I don't know, Debian, and then coming of the Gen 2 purists, and then another sect, the arch people who like to spend time configuring their computers, and then there would be different distributions of Wikipedia, and maybe 5 years from now, scholars would have a discussion. Yeah, I like that version of Wikipedia because of this and this and this, and some other scholar would say, no, but the other one is much more whatever.
Well, I like your metaphor in a parallel to the avant-garde movement, but as you certainly know, the avant-garde movement has died. You know, they're eating their own tail now.
But the Linux distributions...
Yeah, I mean, forking is possible. Forking is possible in Wikipedia, but I don't think it will happen for several reasons. First of all, it's about branding. And the brand, the domain, is owned by Wikimedia Foundation. I honestly don't think anyone can just take the content and start a new project on a side. It calls for a community. There's been a number of projects that tried. Even Knoll, Google Knoll, with all the money in the world they had, they failed. So, but on the other hand, I mean, we see projects which do operate on parasitic relation with Wikipedia. Ask.com or Yahoo Answers, all those that take Wikipedia content and add some commentary to it. I wouldn't be very happy if there were many competing forces of Wikipedia, I think, because we still need all hands on board to develop this one. Unlike Linux distributions, I think what is important here is the knowledge creation rather than just the way it's presented. So it would be better to have one great encyclopedia than to have 3 mediocre ones. But on the other hand, I mean, for example, introducing overlays of how Wikipedia information is presented, that would be cool. I mean, if you had a project that could, Google Glass, if it ever took off, we know it didn't, but if it took off, having this sort of compartmentalization of information, or if you had layers that would simplify the language. Because as of now, the language on Wikipedia is adjusted pretty much to a student level. And this doesn't work for many users. Children, high school students, the older people who are not educated. Sometimes they want this knowledge and they do not really comprehend this. Of course, there's Simple Wiki, but again, Simple Wiki never took off, really.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I enjoyed very much. I have one question and one comment. My question is, I really like your attempt to actually provide some framework to understand conflict inside of Wikipedia, and these two dimensions of a level of commitment, level of confrontation. I would like that you provide some more description about which method did you use, and if you consider also other access for understanding this to complexifies the framework. That's the question. And the comment is, it goes into the direction of how to frame this contribution into the literature on Wikipedia. And my impression is that there is already a lot of studies and publications about Wikipedia. Nevertheless, at the beginning in the literature, there were some kind of assumptions or expectations that you seem to have some elements to confront them. Those were, on the one hand, some kind of assumption that it's possible a social organization in which power is not involved. Somehow, like contribution in which they were saying no, in the Wikipedia there is power dynamics. Of course there is power dynamics. How can we even conceive that there are organizational form that doesn't involve them? No? The other one, it was about conflict. That conflict is a deviation, or that conflict can be unproductive. In opposite, you go into the direction of, no, let's assume that there is conflict, but let's think about how it works. The same with power. Let's assume that power is present in any kind of social activity. Let's see how power works. So I really like that you are going into these elements of bringing power into the discussion, bringing conflict into the discussion, and assuming that, of course, in Wikipedia it should be. It's really nice that this is, or it's nice, or it might be also related to the question that political science get attracted to Wikipedia very late. So conflict and power are two key concepts of the discipline. So let's see if they also can incorporate more these dynamics. But even if I think your contribution is good in just going into let's assume there's power, there's conflict, and let's see how it works. I diverse a bit on how you frame it, in the sense of you have in your intervention several times you have say like consensus is what is expected, or Wikipedia is consensus driven, and I think more than the method characterizing that Wikipedia is not characterized by a method. Wikipedia is characterized by an hybridism, or a method pluralism, in the sense of there are Wikipedia has an equilibrium between mission and method. That is what I think it has one of its elements of success, in the sense of it's not that everything should be by consensus. Is that sometimes, many times, there is consensus, there is like debate, but when it's necessary, there is voting, There are also sometimes in which there is like a monarchy in which Jimbo decides. Over time this has reduced his power, but anyway, it's part of it. There are times in which there is a election. So it's amazing how far Wikipedia is able to actually combine very different kind of methods. And this is something that is not only present in Wikipedia, this element of methodological pluralism and hybridism in its governance, but it's also like if we see in the disciplines, like anthropology is defined by ethnographic method. Economics is defined by using statistics, but each time it's also going into no, let's be multidisciplinary, let's adopt several methods to address the question. So this element of being productive, being effective, like in order to achieve a mission, and not stick too strongly into a method. So I think this element that characterizes Wikipedia is also present like more broadly.
Yeah, many thanks for this comment. First of all, about the method. It's been an ethnographic study. I've been a participant observer for a number of years. You were actually, we met at the last year of my writing up. And so the case analysis basis on my insider perception and, repeated reasserting that, that my whole experience is confirming this particular matrix. This is not really brought by an external theory. This is, the way I see it. It's validated through the process of research. The focus on power, obviously I'm skewed by the fact that I did studies of other workplaces using Foucauldian analysis. So for me, it is interesting to look for it in an organization. But what I found surprising is that the official rhetoric of Wikipedia is very much A-hierarchical, A-power-oriented. So I found this dissonance in rhetoric very interesting. And an organization which officially is against power, there's way too much power to ignore it, and a power play. And of course, I agree with you in a sense that Wikipedia relies on many different methods, but still, I'm following what fieldwork brings, and I'm following what the insiders say, and they will speak about a consensus. Consensus is a word people will very often invoke in Wikipedia movement. And also, if you look at the official rules, I'm not talking about practices, but official rules, so the rhetoric, consensus will be considered as one of the highest values for Wikipedia. Even if some things will be resolved through voting, as I showed in Danzig's case, officially it should be resolved through consensus building exercises. And monarchy, the Jimbo's role, is a topic of my chapter, actually, how it changed and how Jimbo totally lost his power over Wikipedia. Is again a historical phenomenon which does not really affect how it is done now. Nobody has this monarchical power on Wikipedia. And I don't think it's good, actually. It would be great to have a benevolent dictator, but we don't.
First, just a curiosity. I read the book, so I think I I should not ask this question, but why was not considered a possible solution to the Gdansk controversy? What is the actual name of the city? I mean, when you arrive by road to the city, what are the signs saying? Was this not considered definitive? And my second really question is, do you think let's say the hardcore community or the nuclear community, the elite you mentioned, are really aware of this, let's say, negative, of some of these negative consequences of the whole bureaucratic structure, basically the huge number of norms, being something that runs against newcomers, since we know there is a decreasing rate of newcomers, and this is one of the main, I think, the main issues today for Wikipedia. And then, if they are aware, why do you think there is nothing, or
to be done, at least.
Yeah, I'll start with the last one. I don't think they are aware. First of all, it's not like that we have a Sabbath of all administrators every year and we discuss it. It's people come, people go. We don't even know how many are really active in the sense of at least following the discussions. And also, I think there is a general perception within admin community that they are protecting Wikipedia. They follow the standards. They are protectors. And, it is through them that the vandals are not allowed on Wikipedia. So I think they have a strong ethos of public work, but they do not really realize that being even neutral instead of inviting and friendly might be perceived as harsh. And there's also, again, I do not want to go into too many details, but there's a lot of wiki rhetoric that is just so emotional that for many people it will sound as very rude. So yeah, you're making an argument and you're basically saying that somebody's an idiot. And instead of starting with something nice, then making an argument, ending with something nice too, you don't. There are studies on gender on Wikipedia. And we know, for example, that readership is pretty much half-half, males, females. Editing, it's difficult to measure, of course, but it's between 15 and at best 20% of female editors. One of the arguments that some people are making is that the lingo on Wikipedia is very much uninviting, and statistically, males are more resilient to this kind of harshness than statistically, again, females. So as a result, there is a clear dominance of guys there. Also, there's a certain heritage of geek culture, since Wikipedia started as a geek project, sort of. So there's a male domination there, but a different topic. Regarding how should it be called? Obviously, the way it's called now was not disputed. Everybody agreed that currently in Poland, this city is called Gdańsk. The question was what the name in English is. And since English-based sources refer to the city sometimes as Danzig, sometimes as Gdańsk, sometimes as Gdańsk, it wasn't very clear. And when sources differ, it's not easy to resolve this. Even the most common usage is not a good solution in this case. Well, sure. I mean, technology cannot be separated from. It's a socio-technological system. Definitely, it would change. The question is to what extent changes introduced in the system are consciously anticipating the outcomes. I have no idea. Even the small changes like notification system that I told you about, I'm pretty sure it will heavily change the way people discuss on Wikipedia. Sometimes you will make a conscious choice not to notify someone. Maybe there will be a norm eventually that you should notify someone in some cases. It definitely changes the dynamics, but the question is whether we can predict the results.
And about this elite, might it be just hypothesis, but like in some democracies, you can have only a certain amount of time being a parliament member. Would it make sense to have this restriction also in Wikipedia? You're not allowed to be, of course, you have to always make any use of it.
If you're asking me about my personal view is just the opposite. We need more admins. In principle, I think we need as many as we can have. And for me, an admin, as a person who is basically trustworthy enough to have the technical abilities that come with it. And there are not many. As an admin, you can delete an article, you can move an article, rename it, and block a person. This is essentially proving that you're sane. But on the other hand, even though it's a very simple set of tasks that you can perform, people attach a large symbolic value to this. The solution that you're proposing, I think, would even more make it, a big deal. I think it should be the least deal possible. More admins. I think people should be admitted more freely. One of the things that I've been unsuccessfully proposing was, for example, a form of apprenticeship, so that, for example, if you receive 70% support, because to become an admin you need 80% support. If you receive 70, let's assign you a mentor, and let's assume that after a certain period you get full adminship without additional vote. Why not? But all those proposals are rebuked because people think it's a big deal, you know, an admin, an elite. I think it would be much better to deconstruct this elitism by making it a smaller deal than a bigger one.
In Debian, this is very widespread.
Mm. What is widespread?
Mentors.
Yeah.
They have, that's the new style.
Yeah, and this is the way it should go, because, you know, if somebody is experienced, this person who is not trustworthy enough to become an admin should get a mentor. Even better, I mean, even a person who does get a lot of support still has a lot to learn. So encouraging a system in which you have mentorship won't hurt.
Because basically what I like, apart from that you have this ethnographic approaches, like treating the phenomena as a history, and this solves a lot of essentialist controversies about how things are, like, for example, what is Jimbo's role? Yeah, Jimbo's role is a history. It started from here, and then it was there, and so on. And that's a very elegant answer to a lot of questions in scholarship. The only disadvantage is that you have to work hard to get it. You cannot just argue it from general principle. But so my specific question would be if Wikipedia ever encountered this classic problem of the cadre. I don't know if cadre means really anything in English. So let's say that you are a communist party.
Oh yeah, okay, correct. I understand. Yeah.
In this case, you have to put persons who are deemed reliable by the party into key positions. But because you just occupied the country, you didn't have the time to produce so many reliable people. So you established the school of the party. You put a lot of poor workers there who are happy that now they have something to eat and they got something from the party. You teach them to be reliable cadre, and then you put them in key positions. But in the beginning, there is this problem. This is a classic problem of revolutionary organization. And I wonder if this happened on Wikipedia, that a lot of people started to edit, but the elites didn't have enough of this cadre of reliable people to put into the...
Yeah, I mean, initially it was very easy to become an admin on English Wikipedia. Basically, it was done without a vote. You want to be an admin? Oh, yeah, okay, we know you. You're there. And yeah, of course. I mean, there's definitely a perception of undeserved titles at some point. Since you become an admin for life as of now, there's no tenure for this position. On some projects there is. I think on Swedish Wikipedia, you get re-voted, for example, every year or every 2 years. I don't remember. But in most projects, you are not.
I just want to put also into context this element of, in Wikipedia, the lack of rotation between the administrators. And I find very positive that in free software communities, they are starting to test, like, the mentorship to find ways to bring more rotation. Because this is not something present in Wikipedia, but in a study I conducted this year on a sample of 300 cases of collaborative communities, 78% of the cases say that they don't have rotation system. So this element of the lack of rotation as part of the culture of open collaboration is very spread around, not only present in Wikipedia.
Interesting.
It's very problematic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point, especially since there are people who were competent, but then they stopped editing, they went away for years, they come back and they try to do things as they remember them, and the project moved on. So. Yeah.
And it would be very good that Wikipedia tries to address this problem, because Wikipedia it's an example for many other cases for spreading it through the field of open collaboration. Not a lot of impact.
So, since I study hackers, I wonder how in this other because basically when you read about, when I read at least about peer production, there is Linux kernel and Wikipedia, and this is the two ideals. And so I wonder, let's say that Wikipedia is not a project of programmers. So how the knowledge of programmers is constructed and viewed inside this project, which is one of the key productions.
If I understand you correctly, you're asking to what extent the community perceive the work of programmers?
Yes, exactly. I mean the programmers who are active inside Wikipedia, like how this technical knowledge is constructed.
It is a complex issue because most of programming is done by people who are hired by Wikimedia Foundation. There is, I think, over 100 currently software engineers who work on a daily basis for Wikimedia Foundation. There's a number of volunteers as well who do little things. But the communication between engineers and the community is troubled. There's been a number of cases in which software engineers were not able to communicate sufficiently the problems they're facing. The community was enraged, frustrated. Also, the logic of software development very often interfered with what the community perceived as important. Even recently, there was a visual editor implementation, and the community revolted, considered it to be a huge failure. Software engineers, on the other hand, were following the logic of, of deadlines, implementation of something which works to some extent, not necessarily is ideal. And yeah, and the story repeats. I mean, even the way you can report bugs on Wikipedia is very flawed because it's so, as of now we're using Bugzilla, and it doesn't really allow to communicate much. There's no community discussion about the bug, to what extent it's important, to what extent it should be prioritized.
Okay. Well, yesterday I mentioned to you that we have done, let's say, a couple of actions in order to make university faculty and students, but basically university faculty, more active in editing Wikipedia, because well, we think that would be one source for gaining newcomers. But in our study, we found that one of the reasons people were not editing Wikipedia is basically, well, is what we all expected, because they cannot, it's not something that they cannot put within their CV, and it's nothing they can use afterwards for. But in most research goals and accreditation processes, at least here in Spain, let's say activities related to public communication of science are considered. They don't value very much, but they are considered. So it could be maybe easy, it could be helpful to include to Wikipedia editions some way in this kind of things. I was told recently by a colleague from Carl and David that there is some talk about giving some kind of credit for editors. But you said yesterday, no, that won't work.
No, it's. I think my view is it would be nice to have, and there in some fields it is happening to some extent. American Psychological Association, if I'm not mistaken, as well as International Sociological Association, are at least making a call to the scholarly community within this field to do more. So if you put on your CV, yeah, I followed the APA advice and did this and that, probably could give you some leverage. But my perception, unfortunately, from the hiring committees and tenure committees is that people really care much more about one journal publication than 1,000 edits on Wikipedia. Just the same it works with case studies, for example. Published case studies will matter only to certain committees. If you apply for a job at Harvard Business School, you will have to write cases. If you apply to any other elite school, it will not matter. So it's not specific to Wikipedia. It's basically that they have very precise requirements because they want to have the same, the same platform of comparing people.
So, no more questions?
I'm thinking about the theory of the double market of, for example, the strategy of Google, no? Of the business model of Google, which is bringing out a lot of free resources and making the business through a second market. So one market is free services, and on the basis of externalities of that market, business, Google built this business model. No? I think somehow, in order to understand the contribution of Wikipedia, or also to understand the possible bringing or matching academic career with Wikipedia, we could also think in terms of double markets, in the sense of in Wikipedia you are not going to gain a peer-to-peer article in a journal that you can put into your CV and is going to be used, as you say, as a standard way of evaluating you. This is not the way you are going to make it, but each time more and more gaining reputation is a manner, not direct, but an indirect manner of gaining resources. And so through Wikipedia you can gain reputation, you can gain networking social capital, and you can gain many other resources that in an indirect manner will give you the direct things that you need for academic career. So I agree with you in the sense of it's an imitation that Wikipedia will directly not give you what you need for your academic career. That is true, but if we think of it from the perspective of the double market, it will not give directly, but it will give you indirect elements, like, as I say, reputation and these kind of things that will make you address what you want. And this is how is explaining, for example, the sustainability of the FLOSS programmers. They contribute to the commons, they build for free the commons, but as a way of it, they show their skills and learn, and then multinationals like IBM contract them.
But this is exactly the model that doesn't work on Wikipedia. I have never ever seen a single case in which somebody would be an expert in a field on Wikipedia and would be considered an expert outside.
I think it gives you the contact of the person.
Never seen it actually, you know. Well,
the problem is that the professionals that you are talking about as important to contact, they are not on Wikipedia. So if all the professionals would behave in the way that you say that it makes sense, then your theory would work. But at the moment, because there is no professionals there, that it doesn't make sense for a professional to go there to know more professionals.
that's one thing, and another is that professionals will often edit outside of their expertise. That's the thing. You edit about your hobby, not about your work. If I professionally write about management 8 hours a day, I do not want to spend another hour doing it for free on Wikipedia. So it's I don't think this model can work. However, I definitely believe there are certain models of academics' participation in Wikipedia. One is a black hat editing. You will edit Wikipedia because you want to put your references there. This, well, we can say it's vanity and it's not useful, but on the other hand, as long as it's well placed, it enriches the article. I can live with that actually. On some Wikipedias it's fine. On English Wikipedia it's forbidden. On some Wikipedias it's okay. Another model, and the one that I try to propagate, is that I think scholars have a moral obligation to, well, first to contribute, but second, more importantly, because this is much bigger impact, is to make Wikipedia editing a default mode for student essays, assignments. And this is, I think, all universities should do this. Just 2 months ago, I wrote an op-ed for the Chronicle of Higher Education, making exactly this point, because this is such a waste. If we think how much student labor on writing essays is wasted. They are read once, graded, and go to the shredder. This is what can be done, And this is definitely a mode of participation for academics in Wikipedia. And as a result of this participation, they will also get, get more involved in Wikipedia. They will understand how it works and so on and so forth.
Yeah, this last option is the one we are trying to proceed. And it's not only good for it's not only an ethical option, because I think we do think, and there are studies who prove this is good for students.
Sure.
For the learning.
This is good for everybody. This writing a Wikipedia article is a perfect academic assignment. You have to look for the sources. You have to identify the research gap, something that isn't covered. You have to really collect it, synthesize it. It's much more difficult than writing an essay that you can actually plagiarize from somewhere and reuse it for different classes. Here you actually have an assignment that is short, simple, has to be original, and will be evaluated by the others. And also students who know that it gets published will treat it much more seriously. So it's a win-win. For professors, easier to grade because it will be graded by the community to some extent. Something that is definitely giving back to the community. So I don't see flaws in this system at all.
I always a bit afraid of this because it might be that, like, if there are other editors there, that they might not like it, like to get to feel, etc. You have an article about some topic, you are one of the few editors where you then suddenly have 20 students coming in, changing everything, so you might get, like to alienate those people. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a risk.
There was a kind of round table where this discussion was had about the idea of assignments as editing in this very room, and at least my conclusion was that the academics saw that they are so expert that compared to their big expertise, editing Wikipedia doesn't require any expertise. So in a lot of cases, they just sent this horde of uncultured barbarians to edit Wikipedia because anybody can edit Wikipedia. And basically the professors who made these assignments didn't take into account, didn't have a proper respect, let's say, for Wikipedia, and didn't realize that editing Wikipedia is a different kind of expertise, and it is a kind of expertise that they have to make and somehow transmit to the students before they just unleash them to edit.
Right.
I would like to complexify a bit the argument because generally my impression is that in Wikipedia, any theory explains all. Like it's very plural in the sense of perhaps what you are saying explains 20% of the behavior, but the other 80% remains unexplained in the sense of the pluralism in terms of the motivation, for example. There's people who make it for fun.
Sure, 50 reasons, sure.
But there is people who also make it in order to gain reputation in their own work and their own fields. And
Sure, I'm talking about the big picture only.
I am totally right, but I think...
Well, there are people who are editing because whatever.
A percentage of the behavior.
Sure.
Because any of the explanations might explain like all the phenomena.
Absolutely, and it's the big picture. I thought it was clear from the very beginning. We were talking about a predominant reasons. So obviously, there are people who do it for reputation. There are people who do this because their tibia or subscription run out. I mean, but we will not single it out as a reason, for analysis. I think predominantly people will not do this for reputation. This will never be in the top 3 reasons, as historically at least, and now. Maybe it will be a reason in the future. But gaining professional reputation is definitely not a major reason for Wikipedia editing. Because we just do not show it there are polls, there are researches, quantitative ones as well. Why do you edit Wikipedia? Nobody points it out as the most important reason.
But one element is the reputation, the other element is the skills that you gain for gaining career. And on this, you can say, because the reputation is not the only one, but also making sure your contribution to the field is in the articles as an academic. If there is an academic about the thing you are an expert and you are not referent and you are someone who has made big contributions, you have a high interest into the
Sure.
article to be there. So I am not like saying only through the question of gaining direct reputation to yourself, but also to all the kind of elements that can bring
Sure.
you contribution. Because to
Sure, but still it's forbidden.
yeah, but and I know this is a tricky example because possibly it's not it's an extreme example. But if you analyze the community of experts, academic experts on Wikipedia, the people who is more reputed, like Marco Hill or the are great Wikipedians. Like if you're going to be a great recognized scholar as Wikipedia, better that you become a Wikipedian. Like,
That's not necessarily true. Joseph Riegel is not an active Wikipedian. And he
was.
he never was really active. He never even made it to admin, and he made like, what, 2,000 edits? It's not really active.
But that's another element, because you might explain like being an active Wikipedian.
Wikipedians didn't consider him to be active.
But he has been involved in organizing the Wikimanias. He has been involved in organizing meetups. So he has been like with what food.
Andrea Gorbatai, PhD about Wikipedia, currently University of California, Berkeley. Very bright scholar about Wikipedia, never involved.
Yochai Bentley.
Same, never involved.
Never involved, that's not true.
Well,
He was one of the organizers of the.
no, I'm not saying there are people,
Boston. I mean,
but this is not an argument. I mean, obviously there are people who were involved and are also scholars. But you're making a point that to be a successful scholar on this topic, you have to be involved, to which I can counter example.
That's part of the more recognized academics on Wikipedia
Mhm.
are Wikipedians. Not everybody, but that's
But this is correlation,
And
not
one-
causation.
Yeah?
This is correlation, not causation.
Yeah, that's true. This is something we can, that's my perception from being part of the community of.
What about Jonathan Citrain?
Maybe
Or-
studying Wikipedia unleashes an irresistible desire in your soul. Like you learn to love it.
Yeah, I have actually a different view. I think you should not be part of if you study Wikipedia, you should make it this.
Yeah, but we can
Because
say
if you get involved,
how
then you
things should
lose
be
your
and how things
objective.
are. That's
Yeah.
two different
Well,
debates.
it depends if you studied anthropology or sociology. If you studied sociology, you shouldn't get involved.
Yeah.
If you have studied anthropology, then there is no way you cannot be involved.
Obviously, methodologically, you have to be true to the methodology you use. I use a methodology which allows very strong involvement. And I generally agree with the observation that to understand it really well, you need to be involved. Because otherwise, it's difficult to understand. Even to know which discussions are important, gradually, just asking people, you will get into the orbit. But I don't think it's a prerequisite. So in this sense, I don't agree. Jonathan Citrain, very famous scholar, also from Harvard, not really involved in Wikipedia and writing important stuff about Wikipedia. Clay Shirky also, again, involved in the widely understood movement, but not really a Wikipedian as such. Very bright person writing about Wikipedia. So we have examples of people who can have really acute observations about this from the outside. And we have great people from the inside who could do this. The ones you've mentioned are very good examples.
Okay. We can go on during lunch. So thank you very much, Dariusz, for such a wonderful.
Thank you for this opportunity.